YouTube, this is RL coming to you again from my channel, and welcome to a new podcast called Press Play, where we were going to talk about video games and everything PlayStation. And here again is my good friend CK.
Hello.
Yeah, you've been away from my channel.
I have.
All my new subscribers don't know who you are, so introduce yourself, I guess.
My name's CK. I've known RL for a very long time, and we kind of together kickstarted the Retro Life reviews.
Yeah, and we're going to actually get back to those.
Yes.
I know you've been busy, that's why there hasn't been any, but we're going to start again, hopefully one every month or so.
That is right.
So we're going to talk about PlayStation, and this podcast is number 1, and this is going to be an ongoing series. Hopefully we'll take it as far as we can.
Yes.
I don't know if we're going to run out of PlayStation topics.
There's never enough PlayStation topic to run out of.
Oh yeah, there's so much PlayStation. There's PlayStation 5, and I don't even have the PlayStation 5 yet, so there's an infinite amount of topics on PlayStation.
That is right.
So today we're going to start this podcast. It's going to be about our introduction to the PlayStation, the original PlayStation that came out in 1995.
95.
Yeah, 95.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I thought I didn't think it was going to be. I got one that early. I'm usually a late adopter, honestly. Like I got a Nintendo probably a decade and a half after it came out. So and most of my consoles have always been at least 5 years plus. Did I get one that early?
So when did you get the PlayStation? When was your first experience with the PlayStation? That's the topic of our podcast, so we'll get into that.
Yeah. If I have to think back, I got it in high school, which now I'm dating myself. But again, I'm not a person that really cares about that. And it would have been grade 10, 95, 96 maybe? I guess it was really early because that was interesting. My first PlayStation was purchased and modded. Now, it was purchased secondhand. I never bought a new PlayStation. So I guess that's why I got it early, because I didn't have to pay full price.
Okay.
I never had the money to buy consoles, so I ended up buying one off of a buddy. And as soon as I got it modded right away, because I wasn't going to pay tons of money for games, because I could barely afford the console, let alone the actual games, right?
Right. They were expensive. They're still expensive.
Yeah.
Back then, they were really expensive. Video games were like, well, I don't know, $90+ back then?
Yeah.
Something like that. I know the Genesis era, the games were very expensive. Yeah. So your first experience, so you got it in 95, it was modded, and
95, 96, yeah, and it was modded so I can play all the backed up CDs, quote unquote. Yeah. Anybody who knew that consoles or the PlayStation from the first gen knows about the PlayStation mod chip. That was like the most popular way to do it. It was a hard hack. Someone had to go in there, solder in this chip to bypass the security check that was programmed into the discs.
Sony's gonna come after us.
Yeah, you can come after me, Sony.
I want to post this now.
I still have that modded PlayStation, and I ended up buying a second one because that one, something happened to it, and every half an hour to 40 minutes, it would just auto shut off. And I think it might have been something to do with a capacitor or maybe a power issue. Okay. But it pretty much, like, it works, but it dies every 40 minutes. So I can't play good games that are worth playing, because then I got to keep resetting and loading, and yeah, it's not worth it.
So basically, the PlayStation 1 is terrible. Why did it last so long? No, I'm just joking. It was an awesome system.
It was an awesome system, yeah.
And my experience with the PlayStation was a little later. I usually was... At the time, I would get a console within the first year or two.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. Back then, I'd always, once the new fancy consoles came out, I wanted the new graphics and everything. So I just was a graphics snob back then. And I was a Sega guy, hardcore Sega guy.
That's right. Yeah.
Genesis was my jam. I loved the Genesis. I milked that for a long time. And then I got the Saturn. And it went belly up.
Oh, you were a Saturn adopter.
I was a Saturn guy. I remember going. I'll tell you a story. I got the Saturn, and when they had that advertisement for like the 4 games you get for the system,
right?
And this was at the time when it was struggling, and I didn't know. My dad said, "Well, I think it's because they're not doing so well. I said, no, they're just giving 4 games because they're generous. And of course, that's exactly what happened. And I remember like a few months later, or even, I don't know if it was a few months later, but whatever. And I went to a store and I said, do you have a Sega Saturn games? They said, what's a Sega Saturn? I said, what?
Wow.
I was so pissed. And I was like, Sega Saturn's dead. And like the guy doesn't even know what it is. And I was like, oh my goodness, I just wasted my dad's money because my dad paid for it, I'm assuming. Or maybe I saved up some money. I'm going to assume that I paid half of it.
Right.
Anyway, I don't want to sound like a complete ass. But I was younger back then, too. I'm dating myself. And, so I really didn't have a console for about a year. I was just playing the games, and of course I got tired of them eventually, and then I was like, well, what do I do? And I actually at the time had a vendetta against Sony.
Oh.
I didn't like this game that I was a big hockey gamer back then. I would play
NHL?
Before NHL.
Right before NHL.
Oh, actually, no, it was NHL. Blades of Steel was first, and then NHL hockey. And then, I remember, and then I wanted a different one, and then Sony came out with a different hockey game called NHL Knights.
Yes.
And it was the first game that had multiple camera angles.
Right.
Which was so cool. And you saw in the box, it looked like a real hockey game almost. Like, the angles. And I love the side to side. I didn't really like up and down because it didn't look like a hockey game. When you're watching a hockey game, it's always side to side. So I wanted it as real as possible. So this game, I played it, and it was just pretty bad game. It was just awful. The puck would go in. You could literally go behind the net, and the puck would go in the net from behind. Gosh. It just was like the collision detection was terrible. It just felt really rushed, and it was buggy as hell.
Yeah.
And so I was pissed, and Sony made it. So I had a vendetta against Sony for at least a year, and I was like, what am I going to do? I need a console. I'm a console gamer. I was never a computer gamer at the time. Still not a computer gamer. Nothing against it. I'm sure all those computer gamers out there, the graphics are always superior, but hey, eventually it'll catch up, I think. But anyways, that's not the topic of this video. So yeah, I was deciding whether I should do N64 or PlayStation, but then I didn't want to do the N64 because it was going back to the cartridges. And I felt like CDs were the wave of the future, and I didn't want to go back to blowing on cartridges, which I always hated that. I had a bad experience with the original NES. It's like, this was just like the blowing on it and all that, and it was not fun. And there was a lot of times where the games just did not work, and I was really pissed. But the Sega Genesis worked,
right?
Didn't really need to blow on it.
No, I never noticed that.
Yeah, I don't think I ever blew on it once. So it was really just the original NES. But hey, love the system, not bashing it. I don't want Sony and Nintendo coming after us in one swift blow. My channel's not that big, so I'm sure it'll be okay. But so I decided, all right, I'm going to just get the Sony PlayStation. I did some reviews, and I just said, okay. And I finally buried that vendetta. And once I got the Sony PlayStation, I completely forgot about my hatred to Sony and fell in love, and now I'm a Sony guy.
I'm a Sony guy as well, I came from the Nintendo era, again, mentioning that I picked up a Nintendo like a decade after.
Right.
I got it from a friend who upgraded to the Super, then he upgraded to the, 64?
Right.
Yeah, and then he upgraded to the Cube. So he had every console. Like anytime I ever wanted to play games, I popped over to his place. Right. What I did find though was when the PlayStation came out and he purchased it, we played a lot of PlayStation. We played a lot of fantasy games. We played a lot of sports games. He's a sports guy primarily, and playing the sports games with the more realistic camera angles, the characters, the players, everything about it was just new. It felt fresh, right? Even though it was very heavily polygonal, like the characters were very polygonal. You remember Crash Bandicoot? It was very blocky, and
I bought that game and I didn't like it. I brought it back.
Oh, you didn't like it?
I don't know. I felt like at the time I felt like those games were a little bit too childish for me, and I was moving on past the style games like Sonic and Mario. So I kind of wanted more mature games. But yeah, I mean, obviously you appreciate it more now. But at the time, I didn't really like it. I don't know. Don't leave a comment below if you like that game and let me know if I'm wrong. But hey, personal opinion.
That's right. I enjoyed the platformers out of the gate. I was a huge Spyro guy. Spyro got me hooked on full 3D world gameplay. Nice. And I got really good at Spyro. And I just felt at home with it. I think the first experience of like close to full 3D navigation in a space would have been Star Fox 64. I loved That game. I still love that game. And so ever since then, it was just like, give me full 3D worlds, guys. But they can't do that on the consoles back then at that time.
Nope.
With Nintendo and stuff, they really didn't have it, right?
No.
And not until the...
N64 was getting there.
It was getting there, yeah. It
Still
was getting there.
very polygonal, but that was the era the beginning of the 3D, and everyone was obsessed with 3D at that time.
And Sony was on top of that, and they just, everything that they released, even if it was a basic platformer or some glitchy game just for some, like, you know, some niche market, they were all about, give me 3D, and then everything else from that. Give me good skins, 3D, and that's it. You know, I didn't mind the loading times. That wasn't a big thing. I know a lot of people were just like, "Oh, I hate waiting for loading the PlayStation."
Nobody likes to wait.
I always thought it was one of those kind of like, you know, what's the surprise? Like, what's the next thing? Especially if you've never played a game and then you see the loading and it's switching scenes or switching environments. You're like, ooh. For me, it was that's what it gave me. It gave me that bit of kind of holding my breath for the next great thing that's going to happen in this game, assuming I enjoyed the game, of course.
Right.
If I didn't, then loading was just like,
why bother playing it?
Exactly. You know,
just take it out of there and pop something else in. Yeah, don't wait for that loading time if you can't. If you're cringing, what's going to load next? You know.
Yes. Yeah,
but I hear you. My game that I got into, and this is really when I got into gaming. PlayStation. Why I have a love for Sony PlayStation is that it really introduced me into the gaming world. Like before then, I had a Sega Genesis and I played a lot of sports games, but this was the first system that I played games that you felt like you were playing like a movie almost. You know? Like Metal Gear Solid was the first real game other than. Well, I did get Angel 99 on the PlayStation 1, and I loved that game a lot because that was a really much better than Angel 97 on the Sega Saturn, which was garbage. Terrible game. Another bad game. Another hockey game that was just clunky as hell. Yeah. But that was that era, right? The Sega Saturn couldn't handle it. And the PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid, I played a lot of that game, and that was my first real introduction to real gaming, I would think. I'm not saying that other games were not real, but this felt like a really amazing experience.
It was interesting. I think after the Spyro and the platforming, so I enjoyed Crash Bandicoot, I enjoyed Spyro and a lot of the other earlier games, and then I started to play some of the action shooting games, and one that clicked, it took a while for me to get used to it, but it after a while, I ended up getting really good at it, was Siphon Filter. Oh, yeah, and then everybody's just like, oh, it's just like a knockoff Metal Gear and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but that over-the-shoulder third person, it was... You know, Modern Warfare before Modern Warfare. It was Rainbow Six before Rainbow Six was that type of game, right? It was that type of game where, you know, you played as the main character Logan. You walked around and you basically stealthed and sniped, and that was the game. And I absolutely loved everything about that. Had the first one, burned. Had the second one, burnt. Got the third one secondhand at a what were they at the time? Were they EBs at the time? No. What were the game shops in the 2000s?
I don't even remember, man. It's so long.
Because it wasn't GameStop, and I know, and I don't think it was EB at the time. But
they were not in Canada.
Yeah, they weren't in Canada, but I ended up picking up at a. You know what? Funny enough, it might have been like a Kmart bin or something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Still Walmart and like all those other stores, like the Eaton's or Sears, or
they had game shops and stuff like that.
And they had like consumer distributing. I think they were done by the 2000s.
Consumer was pretty much done.
They were in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and I think Kmart was on its way out in the early 2000s. So it might have been a Kmart bin, or it might have been just one of those like game store bins. And I ended up picking up Siphon Filter, the third one, and I still have them. I still have all my original Black Labels that I picked up secondhand because I didn't buy anything new. I'll let you guys know straight up right now. And if we talk about games and purchasing, outside of the new games, like anything those PS3, 4, and I don't have a 5 either, but at some point when we acquire PS5s, eventually at some point,
I'm going to wait a little longer this generation.
Most of the games would have been purchased new, but my PlayStation 1 and 2 era would have definitely been all secondhand games, either purchased off a buddy who didn't want them anymore, or purchased from a bin of some type where they're just unloading stuff. Paid too much for it, obviously, but that was the PlayStation was honestly, as you say, kind of your introduction to like proper game, like being more of a gamer, playing gaming.
More like
it was the same for
story.
me. It really was.
First games that had a story for me, like an actual story. The other games that I played back in the Genesis era didn't have a story. They had some written text, perhaps.
Yeah.
But there was no real. You didn't feel like you're playing a story. You know what I mean? Like the Metal Gear Solid and even Silent Hill, which I loved Silent Hill.
Yes, you do.
And that was like my first foray into horror gaming. And I remember those. You remember those old demo discs you used to get?
I do.
Those magazines?
Yes, I do.
And I used to get those demo discs, and I would see the game, play the game on there, and I would play some games like Resident Evil 2. And then I actually didn't like Resident Evil 2.
No?
I didn't like the stiltedness as you're going into the backgrounds. It was not 3D. Right. It was just the image.
It was it was like a fixed
image.
Room.
And Silent Hill was a 3D experience, complete 3D, and it just blew my mind. It was just the atmosphere in it. Yeah, it was just amazing. So stay tuned to episode 2 when we talk about Silent Hill, even though CK I don't think has any experience with this game.
I have no experience with Silent Hill. I did play a bit of Resident Evil, actually, with my buddy that had all the consoles.
Yeah.
We played through because I helped play a bit, but we primarily played through the first one that was on that console. And I enjoyed it for what it was. I knew that going in that it wasn't going to be a full 3D game, but it had the story. And it had the surprise element and all the little things that made that generation of gaming truly unique. Because I believe it was an evolution of gaming. Yeah. When the PlayStation came out, they truly evolved the space that everybody had to come up to. Sega had to. Nintendo had to.
Right.
Microsoft was just popping in. Maybe a couple of years later for the PS2. Microsoft was coming in, PS2 generation. So I think they set a benchmark, a very high benchmark for the expectations of what console gaming could be in the future. And to this day, Sony is still number one. As you can hear, we're both Sony fans over here.
Well, that's why we're doing a press play, not press
X.
Press X for Xbox. And nothing against the Xbox. I don't have an Xbox. I don't know. I just prefer the games that are on the Sony PlayStation. Yeah. And you know what? When they came out of nowhere, really, Sony, when they, in 95, and they just like took the console wars and shook it up, and then stole the show. It became Nintendo and Sony, and Sega just fell off the trail, mostly because of the Sega Saturn flopping. That's right. And then the Saturn, then they came out with the Dreamcast, and that did really well. But when PlayStation 2 came out, it just blew it out of the water, know. It's just the amount of games and the way they put out those games and just, the amount of quality games and so many different sequels and so many franchises came out of the PS1. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, and it's still to this day, they're still making sequels to those games,
Which is fantastic because you want to carry that legacy, right?
Oh, for sure. And, but then again, I don't hate Resident Evil, by the way. I actually enjoy it nowadays. Like, I loved Resident Evil 7. I think I appreciated Resident Evil more when I got a PS3. When they sort of became a little bit... I think it was really Resident Evil 4, that one, when it was the first real 3D Resident Evil game. Didn't it come out on PS2, I believe, right?
Yes, it would have been 2.
Yeah, so PS2 was when. I thought it was PS3. But no, PS3 was the Resident Evil 5. That one was pretty good, too. Yeah. So that's when I started getting into Resident Evil. I guess I just liked the 3D elements. I didn't like the walking in backgrounds and stuff. I don't know why. At that
fixed
point,
environments and the weird controls. Because it always had a weird control, right?
Actually, I wanted to talk about this next episode, but another game that I loved, which had tank controls, was Fear Effect. Fear Effect.
Yes.
And that was not a 3D game. That was a game where there was 3D elements in there, but you were mostly walking into pre-existing backgrounds. What do they call it? Pre-rendered backgrounds.
Pre-rendered, prefab.
But they had like flashy lights, and there was like a lot of dynamic elements to those backgrounds, so it didn't feel like they were stagnant, whatever. Like, it felt alive. Yes. And that game was just awesome, Fear Effect. I was so sad. I was so upset when they canceled the PS2 version. They were going to do a third one.
Oh, really?
And they just
didn't
completely, they were doing... the same company was making Tomb Raider, and they just focused on Tomb Raider and Fear Effect.
Tomb Raider's another massive franchise that came
out. Yeah, but I was pissed at Tomb Raider at the time because those games I felt were awful in that era. Nowadays, Tomb Raider's actually quite good. I like the Tomb Raider for the Rise Sun. What was it called? I can't remember that name.
I don't know. I never outside of
Rising Sun or
Yeah.
something. Tomb Raider, the latest. Well, the one that I played the latest on
one,
PS4.
yeah, PS4.
That one was amazing, but I think it took a while for Tomb Raider to really get good.
Yes.
You know, because at the beginning it was just Lara Croft, sex symbol. And that's what drove
Two guns,
it.
short shorts. Yeah,
exactly. Pointy boobs.
That's,
you know,
that's right.
that could poke eyes out. I don't know why she just kill her bad guys with her boobs. Clearly, they would have been like decapitated with those things. But anyways, yeah, I really was a little upset because I really loved Fear Effect. Hopefully one day they'll bring it back because it was an amazing. Nobody knows about it nowadays, but it was so. They made two. They made two of those games, and yeah, that's all right. Let's call it there. So this is our episode of Press Play, all things PlayStation. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below and let us know what's your favorite PS1 era video game.
Right.
If you like the horror, the Crash Bandicoot,
Bandicoot.
Okay. That's why I gave the game back. I couldn't pronounce it. And yeah, let us know what your favorite PlayStation 1 game is. And the next episode, we're just going to continue to talk about PlayStation and see how long we could talk about the first era PlayStation, because there's so many more games that I would love to talk about.
There's so much more first era stuff.
Yeah, so much.
We got to get into some technical talk.
Yeah.
I believe we have some conversations about setups, different versions that were released, obviously.
So many episodes coming your way, guys.
Coming.
This is a new episode podcast format. And also, we're going to be doing, again, Retro Life reviews. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Retro Life reviews will be back on board in a short while as well. It's something that we haven't touched in a while, and as you know, any of the old school followers know that you know it's kind of fell off a little bit. But RL's always making content. So, you know, whether
I got my pizza giving away content. I love it. RO plays retro, lose a life, lose a slice. And that's my main content. I'm loving it. It's enjoyable, fun to make. And people seem to be liking it more and more. So I'm going to continue doing that. But I'm going to have 3 different video style contents on my channel. So that's exciting. So, all right. So like, subscribe, leave a comment below. And that's all for now. So thanks for being here, CK.
Thank you for having me again. And I look forward to more PlayStation conversations.
Me too.
Fantastic.
All right. So we will have more retro content in the weeks, months, and years to come. Bye for now.
Ciao, folks.